Came here for testing tune and got dragged into a race. So pretty much last time we were out at the track, made some test hits on a Thursday, which blew the tires off a lot, which is expected with everything that we changed and how hard we were trying to hit it with the power. The last two passes ended up getting some pretty good numbers. Came back to the shop, changed a couple things, went out on a Saturday test night, and right off the trailer, did a 5.0, it's still 146 miles an hour. Which is pretty good. But other than that, it kept blowing the tires off. So we had a pretty good amount of issues with the shocks that we had. Like I said before in the last video, our springs were 150-pound springs, and the weight reduction that we did on the car, we had to reduce the spring rate basically of what was in the car, because these would only compress 2.5 to 3 inches, and that compression is the only extension we had. So it takes 150 pounds to compress that spring 1 inch. So if we only have 2.5 inches, maybe 3 inches of compression, when we separate the car at 2 inches, that little extra ½ inch or 7/8 of an inch, you're barely having any preload left on the spring. We went with 100-pound springs. That way they would compress 4 inches. So we have a lot more spring rate to mess with whenever it starts separating a lot. We got a good amount of anti-squat in the car right now, but without a proper spring rate, you're kind of fighting yourself, and we had to loosen the extension up a lot and tighten the compression up a lot in order to make the car do what it needed to do. We still got a pretty impressive 4, but still with springs it would help out a lot. On the first test day we had on a Thursday, the trans pressures was kind of dropping quite a bit. We tried traditional transmission fluid the first go around, and after that we did a little half and half mix of what we have, and it helped out a little bit, but we're still getting a lot of pressure drop on high RPM. So we brought the car back to the shop, and we were looking over data logs and looking over the car and what we did and what we changed, because we also needed a more dump pressure drop on the line to build up two-step a lot faster and a lot higher in RPM. So looking at the data logs, looking at the car, and looking at the changes we did to the pump, we found that the pump itself has issues on keeping the pressure up high. It wasn't anything as far as the modifications we did to the pump, it was the actual pump itself.
So little things you need to look at, like it's got a raised lip right there on that hole. That could cause it to not seat properly and leak. Even though this side probably wouldn't leak as easy as something inside because it has a seal right here that it can squish. But inside of here, it's just two machine surfaces going together. And if you have anything like that, it's not going to properly seat flush. And then you're going to have a leak by in a channel, or one of your fluid lines is just not going to have the proper pressure. So that's your pump, your actual pump gear, and what that does is that holds the pump gears in place where they're supposed to be. So this is the suction side where it actually gets its fluid from the transmission. It sucks it in where it starts opening, pulls all this full of fluid, and then as it spins around, these gears squish it in between the two teeth, and that's what builds the pressure, and then it pushes it out into the rest of the system. This is my theory. I mean, I need to look it up and make sure, but in how things work, this is what I would assume. Is when you look at this gear, the teeth are flat on the edges, flat all the way around the edges. So it has what I would call a full face tooth. You'll see that this one's got a full tooth, but when you flip it over, it's got just a hair of a chamfer on the inside. When we pull this one apart, you'll see that this has a much more dramatic grind on the tooth. Full tooth. Look at the kick on that.
Oh yeah. So it's like squeezing around it.
So if I were to just put these two next to each other, see the kick difference? That's pressure or volume loss in the pump. It's a natural leak.
Was it made like that, or is that just wear?
That's how this is probably a low volume pump, and we're running out of volume at higher RPM. So that's probably why this pump is giving us hassle. Not only that, so that's your inside gear. You've also got this gear. And when you look at this one compared to the other one, you've got straight gears on both sides. Flip it over. That one's got a tiny little, I mean, it's not even noticeable on that one, but look how noticeable it is on that one. So this pump overall, and these gears in this pump overall are just not going to produce the same as that one. And these pumps are different, and you can tell by the channels. This has a channel that flows all the way around. It's deep, and it goes to the converter charge port. This one doesn't have that channel. So this pump we actually modified right here. So this is the return channel for the cooler, or converter charge pressure. We actually turn this into our converter charge pressure pre-dump. By joining these two, it allowed us to use the top fitting on the transmission as a dump before the converter. And then in the pump itself, we blocked the return off. So this just functions as converter charge pressure before the converter. And then in order to keep everything oiled inside the transmission properly, we did a 060 hole drilled in that channel, so that way the gear set still gets all of its lubrication fed by the line pressure. So basically what we're going to be doing on this pump is we're going to be blocking our return port off, drilling a hole in the return port passage. That way the line pressure can feed and oil the gear sets. And then this port here will no longer be used, which is the upper port on your transmission. And what is typically done is this channel right here is bridged together. Take a grinder and we'll grind it. Or we use a deburr and air grinder, and then we smooth it out. That way we still get the nice smooth channel. We did all this and that with a deburr tool. And what that allow you to do is just put a pressure gauge on the top port and run everything else normal. But since you're blocking the return off in the pump, your return is now going to your pan. And the reason why that's nice having it go to the pan is because you can take restrictors and change your converter charge pressure by the restrictor that is in the return line. So it's much easier to dial in the converter charge pressure that way without having to pull the transmission or the pump apart.
Since we got the trans out and the fluid drain.
Do the do.
It's a whole bunch of channels, really.
Chris, give me a sign off. I haven't got one of your sign offs in a while.
Appreciate you watching the videos, man. Like, share, subscribe. Check back in. Check our website. We sell stuff on our website, diesel stuff. Check that out. And stay tuned for our next video.